A lot of nonprofits believe that if you build a great gala, people will just come and automatically just give money. And that's just not the case. You have to do so much pre-work. In order to make money, you do have to spend money. There is a cost to free. If the video plays but there's no sound or you can't hear what's going on, that is a huge cost to your organization. Why are they there? And it is to fundraise. And so weaving that storytelling through every aspect of the night is super important. Storytelling is still key. And you know that probably better than anyone, right? When you're doing your impact videos for clients, it's that storytelling that will really help drive that fundraising.
Fundraising events aren't just about raising dollars. They're about raising impact. When done right, they blend storytelling, logistics, and community into nights that people don't just remember, but they invest in. If you've ever wondered how to turn galas into growth engines, if you've been looking for ways to elevate donor experiences, or if you want to avoid the most common mistakes nonprofits make with events, then this episode is for you. And few know this better than today's guest, Gazala Uradnik. Hello, hello.
Hello.
And for those that don't know, you are the founder of GFS Events. And for those who also don't know, you guys are a major player in this game. Let me make sure I get these stats correct. Have helped nonprofits raise over $100 million through purpose-driven events. Can we take a moment? Can we just wow.
It is a little bit of a wow moment for me too. When you say it out loud, it's pretty amazing and pretty awesome to recognize that. And that's over 13 years of doing events.
You've been doing this work,
yes,
as they say.
Correct.
And that's awesome. We had spoke a little bit off camera about how, it's kind of, we often don't take time to reflect as we just pour ourselves into our clients. And it's always, all right, just got through the adrenaline dump of doing that gala Saturday. And okay, what's next? When's that next thing and that we're doing? And even when it's not gala season, you're sending me things of team building and networking and all these other things that you're constantly doing. So that's why I wanted to invite you here and take a moment, sit down on the couch, relax a little bit, but just be able to give you your flowers. You've been doing some awesome work. I've had the benefit of working with an amazing event planner. We also talked offline of, some of my frustrations or challenges on production is this would have been a lot easier if you guys would have had an event planner. So let me be a part of the solution where it's let me invite folks into my circle of awesome people I get to be in space with, and hopefully folks can get some information. Folks might be able to find a new partner in production and things of that nature. So thank you again for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to spend a little time talking to you today.
Awesome. So I like to start all of our Elite Insight episodes with kind of what is your Elite Collective or Carlos Yamani story in terms of, without dating ourselves, of your first experience and kind of what led you to this couch today.
Okay, so we were trying to think about this earlier, and we couldn't come up with the exact moment when we first connected, but I do believe it was Jubilee for Justice. And so kind of going back to 2022, which was, as we talked about earlier too, it's that pandemic, those 3 years for me, that 2019, 20, 21, and 22 are kind of condensed into a year almost, right? A very, very, very long year.
Right.
And so we were just coming out of the pandemic in terms of doing some, starting to do some of those in-person events. And this particular client really wanted to do a virtual, and then we decided to turn it into a hybrid. And you helped us do that quite well, coming in and doing, and just kind of creating something that hadn't even really been done before a lot, with other fundraising events. And so it was a very cool concept where we had about 120 people in the room, but then because this was an organization that was statewide, we were able to also broadcast that, and we had probably another couple of hundred online. And so, that was just something that we hadn't even considered before, doing something like that and doing a fundraiser like that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you guys were leading that way on that pivot, right? Where it was okay, one, everything got shut down, and then it's all right, how can we go virtual? And some folks did some online stuff, but I think, you guys were definitely one of the first events that we were able to do hybrid. And it was a way where, if memory serves, they were able to kind of get close to some of those fundraising goals that they had previously, where you're able to bring in 160 or so in the room, another couple hundred online, and like, hey, there goes our 300-person room that we had before.
Exactly.
And be able
Yeah.
to make that happen. And I'm sure some of y'all can relate. If you were on a computer during those times, you met people in little squares on a Zoom meeting, and it's like, what's possible? What can we do? And for me, that's where my creative juices kind of come, when a client comes with something that hasn't been done, or just kind of imagine, right? Where you're like,
Yep.
could we do this? What would that look like? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we can. I don't have an answer right this second. Let me do some YouTubing. Let me go into our studio and practice some things. And for me, I would say a lot of that experience came from my work with Converge Media, where during the pandemic, we were doing essentially, virtual, shows and getting news out. But that was where we kind of cut our teeth on the gear that was used, and kind of figuring out how can we do this kind of virtual thing and connect with folks and have the plugins and the HDMIs and all that. And then you guys were able to navigate that other side of like, how can we create this experience and still have people feel connected?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've taken that event, and even just last year, it was, in a pretty large hotel in Seattle. No longer as much of that kind of hybrid portion, although we did a little bit of an online, maybe only like 25 or 30 people online in 24, and then but super successful in-person event. So,
Yeah.
And then you did the audio and video for that. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love how we're able to kind of work with people. And I'm really big in relational in that sense. And I know, same for you guys, especially in the nonprofit world, or I like to call it our mission-driven organizations, where it's like relationships matter, right? Where you're able to connect with people. We share similar values. And then also when you're on set, when, like I say, you don't know what it's going to be, but there's going to be a challenge. And when you're around and working with people that you connect with, it's like, I know you're going to make it happen. And then you have that same trust on that side where, hey, we got thrown a wrench last minute,
Absolutely.
but we're going to make it happen. It's going to be okay. And just finding your people is kind of what I call it. Find your tribe, find your people, and then you can do amazing things. And like you said, we went from hybrid, and then now we had this opportunity to be essentially 100% in person in terms of the capacity of the room. There still were that need, and for folks that this particular client was really big on, like, hey, if you can't be here in person because of your own limitations, or there might be mobility issues,
Correct,
language, all those things they were very in tune with. And you're like, hey, Carlos, can we do live caption? Hey, Carlos, can we do this? Like, yep, we got a person for that.
Yeah.
I think we had Spanish in the room.
We did.
Headsets, and it was really cool to see how you're able to take all these clients' needs and then turn it into like, man, here's my punch list. We'll get it done for you.
Yeah, that particular client was very, very, it was really important to them to have that diversity, equity, inclusion really strewn throughout the entire event. So that was super important to them, and of course to us, and I know it is to you as well. So it was great to be able to do all of those things. Not only the closed captioning, we had cart services, we had the Spanish interpreters. We did quite a few things to really make it inclusive for everybody.
Yeah, no, and it showed in the room, and it was awesome to see. So that's what got us to the couch. But now I like to kind of take a moment and allow you to kind of share, your journey in terms of GFS. I'm hearing 13 years, which is awesome. A lot of folks don't make it to year 3 or year 5 or year 7. So tell us a little bit about your journey of what got you, into this space and with the business.
Yeah. So I have always been in that nonprofit space. My background is actually healthcare administration, and that's what I went to school for. And so I've always done kind of that business development and strategic planning on the hospital side, believe it or not. And hospitals are one of the largest nonprofits that are out there. So that was kind of my background. And then I've also been an entrepreneur at heart. I've really always wanted to own my own business, enjoy kind of having that ability to be flexible and be independent. And so I knew I wanted to do something on my own, and it just sort of was a great fit to do something in that nonprofit field. Initially, when I started GFS Events, I thought I was going to be a consultant and work with clients on all the things that nonprofits need, that board education, strategic planning, things like that. And honestly, the first few clients that came forward wanted help around events. And I love events. And so that's kind of how it started. The very first few clients in 2012 wanted help with, it was a golf tournament, there was an auction, and a large community wide event. So we did 3 events in 2012, and fast forward to 2025, and we are doing a little over 50 events, not just only in the Pacific Northwest, but actually in various parts of the country as well. So we have done more events in California over the last couple of years, and we can do events anywhere.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And that, within that, is there some milestones that kind of shoot out to you in terms of accomplishments or like special events that still you remember? I mean, obviously you remember those first 3, right? Those are the ones that got us started.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of putting that dollar bill on your wall
Exactly.
of like, hey, this is you guys were the first. Thank you. But throughout that time, are there any other milestones that kind of pop out at you?
Well, I think that the growth of my team, right? That's a huge milestone. That first event, as you mentioned, it was all hands on deck from my family. So we had, I'm sure you kind of started that way too, right? Everyone is kind of at that event helping out. So I had my sister there, I had all my 3 kids, my husband was there setting up tents, and we were all in it together. And I think one of the milestones for me is having come from that to where we are today, which is a really, really strong team of GFS events that, I can count on to be at the event. And I think my family's not as involved in the day-to-day event piece of it, but I think that's a huge milestone. And then just really being able to, that first client that wasn't in the Pacific Northwest, that was a huge milestone too for us. So that was pretty exciting being able to. And I think what helped with that was all of the virtual pieces we did during the those 3 years, helping us to realize that we don't have to be in the same room with a client to be able to really pull off a successful event. So we can do that from a little tiny box on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys hear that? Those folks out there, wherever you're at, they are ready. Like I try to tell people, like, we are passport ready and are willing to travel. It's like we got married in 2020, my wife and I, and it was February 20th, 2020. So it's like literally right before we come back. March 3rd was my first event, and then that's when the phone calls started coming in of, hey, we're gonna hold off and see what happens over these next 2 weeks, and then everything started getting canceled. But I remember, like, I had brought down pretty much my whole team to the wedding, and we had drone, photo, video, photo booths, like all the things, and I had this grand idea of, like, showing that we can travel, had to get like the international business insurance and things and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like coming from there, I was like, all right, we're going to be able to do these events in Mexico and wherever and all that stuff. And then the world got shut down. But we still have our passports and we are still willing to travel. And it sounds like you guys are willing to go.
We are indeed.
Everywhere
Happy
as well.
to do an event with you in Mexico anytime.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Absolutely. But that's the reality of it, though, like what you were saying, where we don't have to be in that room to be of service, right? So if someone has a need and we have a skill set, how can we provide that service and be able to make that happen? I mean, it's awesome to see that you guys are able to do that, go down to Cali and other places. Because like you said, like if you have a need, we have a service for you. No, that's awesome. And then I want to kind of get into your vision around fundraising. I have a chance to see you on panels around event planning and be in space around networking events. And I feel like you have a lot to offer and share in terms of like where fundraising is. We've seen kind of ups and downs in terms of the style of events, in terms of like what are realistic goals and what are like new ways to think about it, and kind of want to kind of give you an opportunity to kind of talk about what you've kind of seen over these last couple years, and maybe talk about pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, or however you ever want to frame it. But I know it's ever changing, and just kind of want to give you opportunity to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, for nonprofits, I think one of the things, and one of my mantras, is that a lot of nonprofits believe that if you build it, they will come, right? If you build a great gala, people will just come and automatically just give money. And that's just not the case. You have to do so much pre-work. You have to build those relationships, build those donor connections, actually ask donors ahead of time what they're willing to give, how much they're willing to give, and plant those seeds. And so I think what happens in the event world is nonprofits get so deep into the weeds of planning their event that they don't have that time to focus on those donor relationships and those donor connections. And so that's part of what we want to bring to, and part of our services is allowing clients to be freed up from all of those event details and all the event tasks, and really having them recognize kind of that big picture. What are their goals? How are we going to achieve them? What are things that we can cut out? For example, a giant silent auction that takes up a lot of time and energy and effort, and instead bringing in some more mission moments or mission-driven type of experiences to an event. And I think that whether it was, pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, storytelling is still key. And you know that probably better than anyone, right? When you're doing your impact videos for clients, it's that storytelling that will really help drive that fundraising. And so allowing clients the space to focus on that and away from things that, take up a lot of energy and time. And that's what we kind of help our clients manage and project manage and work through, so they can really focus on those donor connections.
No, I love that. And it's kind of like, I think of it in terms of like, when you kind of come together, we're kind of forming this team, and, we become us being the event folks, an extension of them and of their team. I like for them to see us as that, but it's like, hey, like you said, it frees you up, and you guys can focus on what you do well. Chances are you probably know your donors better than we know your donors, and allow that time to get in there, and you're not necessarily worrying about some of these other little things. Like, we'll see you at the tasting, and you can come and tell us, do you want the steak or do you want the chicken, and things of that nature, but not get caught up in the weeds of that kind of stuff. And that kind of led to my next question of like, what do you think separates like a successful event from a forgettable one? And you had kind of mentioned like little things like, maybe the silent auction's a little dated and there's other ways, but just trying to think of, from what you've seen and experienced, like what kind of sets the things apart. Because I feel like when you go into an event space, like everyone wants their event to be remembered. And it's like, oh, we were the event of the year or whatnot. And how have you seen people, be successful in that, and where have folks fallen short?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think it goes back to like when you're doing something, again, going back to programming and like even cocktail hours. So if you've got an event where, there's all kinds of fun games, like maybe there's a wine toss, maybe there's, I don't know, some kind of cool game that people are playing, that is super fun. However, if it's not connected to your organization, then it's probably will end up being, if not forgettable, people won't remember, well, which gala was that? I don't really remember, because there's wine tasses at so many events, right? There's all, so I think setting yourself apart from other organizations' events and looking back at doing things that are connected to you. So I'll give you an example. We have a client that really loves, again, games. Games was a big thing. And so they used to do a cornhole game at their event. And so the year that we worked with them, we came up with a different idea. It was still kind of a cornhole type of an event, of a game where we had a board that was, instead of flat on the ground, it was standing up, and it still had holes in it. And their logo is actually a paper airplane. The visual of it is a paper airplane, and it's about soaring to new heights. So instead of throwing, like a beanbag, folks were actually flying a paper airplane through that. And so the messaging on the actual board itself related to the organization, the airplanes related. So it was very visual, and that was something that was memorable, right? People are like, I've never seen this before. And it connects to who they are and what they do. And so again, that is what I think creates a memorable type of an experience for a guest. So something that's kind of out of the ordinary, but again, connected back to an organization, is really what guests are going to come back and say, oh yeah, I know why I'm here. That's the other part of it, is why are they there? And it is to fundraise. And so weaving that storytelling through every aspect of the night is super important.
No, I love that, and customizing it to that degree is brilliant. And unless you got a paper plane in your logo, don't be trying to steal their stuff. We'll know. But that's awesome. It's like, here's the physical thing in your hand that's connected to their logo, and it's like you're going to remember which gala that was.
Exactly.
You know, so mission accomplished. Well done. Well done. And then one thing I wanted to do is like kind of drop some tidbits for the folks that are in and around events or thinking about doing events of what are some mistakes that we have seen or experienced. Like for me, for example, I see folks that, especially if they haven't done an event at this level before, of having a good comprehension of time that it takes to set that thing up. We'll see that in terms of like, hey, we have this room for 500 and we want sound in it, we want video in it, and we also want this hallway of engagement and games, but we also want sound and a couple of screens playing stuff, which is all doable, all totally cool, and can be applied to many things, but we don't have access to the space till 2 and the show's at 6.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, how, in what world? So from an AV standpoint, that's kind of how I see things of like, okay, I'm glad we talked about this 3 months in advance. Can we get a day before, or can we come in at 8 a.m. instead of 2 and kind of work out some of those pre-day things? But from you at a top level, I'm sure you experience that in a way more directions than just the AV team, but kind of want to talk through some of those things for folks that are kind of ready to, you know, take their event to that next level where, okay, I think I'm ready for a GFS to kind of, you know, help me produce this next thing. But what can we kind of plant some seeds around that they can kind of think about of things to avoid?
Yeah. Well, I am big in my own business about doing things that I'm really good at and then passing off those things that I'm not really good at to other people. And I think that's a lesson for nonprofits. So let's not have maybe one of your board members be our auctioneer on stage if they aren't a professional auctioneer. Let's not have your cousin's brother's friend's sister do the, you know, the AV and be able to do, you know, some of those kinds of doing the tech work or anything like that if they don't have that experience. So hiring professionals, whether it's AV, auctioneers, so many other pieces for food, catering for sure. I think that's super important. And then with that, in order to make money, you do have to spend money. And so I think that there is a cost to free. And that's what a lot of our clients will say, well, but if we do this is free. Why don't we do it this way? Well, there's a cost to that. So when the person who's running your AV, if the sound doesn't work, if the slides aren't matching or the video plays, but there's no sound or you can't hear what's going on, it's just, that is a huge cost to your organization. And so again, just being able to recognize when to bring in professionals, I think is a huge piece of it.
I love that. I think we might get that on a t-shirt. There's a cost to free, because we see that a lot for me on our side where, and I get it, like we're not for everybody. If there's not a budget for Elite Collective and we try to make it work, but we can't do for free. It's like my thing is like, hey, I can meet you somewheres, but I can't, for example, donate my crew members' time. Like their labor is their labor. Right. You know, it is what it is type of thing. And I get that. But then there's a cost to free. Like you're going to pay for it in one way or another.
Absolutely. Well, and my favorite question that I get is, well, do you have a nonprofit discount? It's like, well, we only work with nonprofits, so that is the discount.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, is there more of a discount? I'm like, so you want me to do it for free? Copy that. And that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of things. I'm like, I'd rather just give it to you 100% for free and just be like, we are going to donate this, because then it's like you don't value what the thing is. You know, if it's like, oh yeah, we can come, yeah, sure, I'll give you 75% off. It's like, what gives 75? You know, then it's like, why were you charging that much to begin with? Yeah. So our thing is like, let's get as competitive as possible to be able to do the job, pay our team thriving wages. I tell everyone always, Michelle Merriweather from Urban League is the first person I heard that, where she wanted to pay her own staff a thriving wage to be able to live and work in Seattle. And I'm like, yes, we shouldn't be surviving if we're living and producing in these, you know, metropolitan cities, being Seattle, Bellevue, whatever. We should be able to also live in these cities that we're doing these things, and those cost money as well. But being able to pay crew members and professionals the rates that they need to make. But there are ways that we can, like, for example, we own our audio equipment. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can bring down a little bit for this event because we're not doing anything else, or, you know, whatever it is. We try to be as competitive as possible to still pay our taxes, pay our people, and also pay ourselves. Like, a lot of people would realize, hey, do you want me to even be here next year to be able to service you? Because at this profit rate, if I did this for all my clients, we would not be in business next year. Exactly.
Well, and I think that scarcity mindset is so, I don't know the exact word, like it's so deep in the way nonprofits think and believe that they don't see that, hey, okay, let's actually come up with a fair budget and something that's going to actually make sense. And we're bringing in people who are going to make our event so successful that we're going to raise the money that we want to raise. And a lot of times we're struggling with focusing on just the expense side, right? It's the expenses, instead of looking at, well, but you really want to raise this amount of money. And so what are we doing to also make sure that we're doing all the things we can to get the revenue in, not just, focusing on expenses.
Yeah, no, and I love that. I think that would be the thing of there's a cost for free, but then it's like there's a benefit to experience, right? On the other side.
Yes.
And going back to hiring professionals, it's like that could be the difference between a 30K night and a 50K night of just having a professional auctioneer
For sure.
that can engage and do his thing, and it gets people going, and it's like there's energy in the room, and like I wasn't gonna give, but I'm gonna give some more.
Exactly.
And you have that wine connection and sponsor, and that's been pouring all night, and people are feeling good, and you had an engaging MC that's been going through. You had that impact video that is touching hearts and minds, and people are associated with it. Because what I tell people as well is like generally everyone in the room, obviously there's some plus ones and some table captains, but most, I'd say 80% of the people in the room care about whatever it is. If it's animals or
Absolutely.
youth or whatever your mission is, but depending on how much you're able to get them give is going to be everything else that's going on. Is like if you have a 3-hour program, guess what? I'm going to be tired and bored and hungry and all the things, and I don't really feel like giving anymore, right? Versus if you have something that's like it's hidden, it's on point, it's just enough time but not too much.
Very tight, exactly on point, knowing exactly when to make that ask, how to make that ask, who is doing that, all of those things. It's all very, it's all very theatrical in some ways, right? We know exactly what's happening when that $50,000 paddle comes up in the air. We know that that's coming. It's not necessarily a surprise. Sometimes there's a surprise,
Right.
but it's those event nights are very strategic. Every part of your event night should be strategic. I think that's my main message, is that let's not leave things to chance. Let's have a plan. Let's be strategic. And then if there's a surprise, a good surprise, fantastic. But we already know what's coming, what's not coming, because we've really done our work ahead of time.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've been on meetings with you guys where you guys have established of, hey, we have a donor that's going to give at X. We know it's going to be there. And if we're trying to hit, this number, let's not say it at the beginning. Let's say it at a certain point, like, hey, guys, we need to get to this level, or, hey, we just need to get to this match. So they can get here as a group, as a team. Then we know we're going to get this payoff. And then everyone feels so good about it. And it was, like I said, it was strategically planned. You're like, okay, we know we have this donor. We're not going to announce it early.
Yes.
Nobody knows about it. But we're going to plan it to where it will make the most impact in the room. And that's a benefit of working with a professional. I love that. One thing I also wanted to get into was kind of balancing things around creativity and mission clarity, right? In terms of like your event and revenue goals. One thing I also wanted to get into was kind of balancing things around creativity and mission clarity, right? In terms of like your event and revenue goals. You talked about, you love a good event, right? That's kind of what got you here. And most folks that are in this work, we like events. Who doesn't, I love, my favorite thing to do is a wedding reception. Like, hey, I'd love a wedding reception at least once a week. It would be fantastic. I don't like the stress of my own wedding of doing it, but I love going to other people's receptions. They're fun. But having just like that joy, right, where you're just kind of seeing joy. It's a family reunion, but it's also structured, from a standpoint. And then in order to create that, there's creativity that goes into it. You're taking a person's brand, like that thing with the airplane, right? That's awesome. I love that. But then how do you what's that balance look like of like, okay, we don't want to necessarily make this a circus, right? In terms of like overly, hitting too many things, but staying in line with the mission, right?
Sure.
The revenue goals, and kind of balancing that creativity. How does that look like? If I call you up and I'm like, hey, I want to do this thing, what does that look like?
Good question. Probably the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what's our budget? So there's always, obviously, the budget is a key, even though I said we don't want to focus only on expenses. There are some parameters. So a lot of times we're just looking at what is it you want to accomplish. I go back to so many times when, and I say this to my team too, so many times a client will say, let's do this grand idea. And they come back and they're like, oh gosh, we don't think this is going to work. There's all these issues and stuff. And I'll go back and say, did you ask your client why? What's the why, right? We all have whys in our lives. What is their why? And sometimes when you hear the why, so Carlos, you want to do this amazing, 5,000 balloons go up in the air exactly at 8 p.m. Can you tell me more about that? Why do you want that? What is that? What are you trying to accomplish? And then you kind of figure out, okay, well, it's not about the balloons. You wanted to create some kind of exciting moment. Okay, all right. So what other kind of exciting moment, could we create that might be actually possible and, isn't taking up so much, latex and
right.
and it's not allowed in this venue. So those are the kinds of questions we ask, is again, going back to the why, because sometimes what you get from a client is what they think the solution is. And what I go back to, well, what's the problem first? Before we figure out what our solution is, you've come up with a solution, but maybe that isn't the solution. You're not solving for what you need to solve for. So let's figure out what your why is. What is the problem? What do you want to have happen? And then we work from there. And a lot of times when we go backwards, we can actually make whatever they want to have happen.
No, I love that. And I love your thing about starting with budget. And I try to do it, and I have to kind of catch myself, because budget to different people mean different things. I know, like, when you and I talk about budget, there's no ego in it. There's no, like, the budget doesn't have a soul, right? It's not a person. It's just a number. And I try to tell people, like, I hear budgets, and to me, it's just literally a different level of production value.
Right.
I know at this amount, cool, I can do this kind of PA system. Right. At that amount, I can bring you LED walls, and we can do different things.
And we've come to you and said, okay, here's the budget. I can't go past this. And you're like, okay, cool. Well, in that case, here's what we're going to do. Will this work? Mm-hmm. And exactly, that's how we do with any vendor, right? With anybody, it's like, okay, if our budget is, if I tell you our budget's $500 for a photographer, you're going to tell me, great, I've got someone for you for maybe about an hour and a half. How does that work? When do you want it? And then we're like, well, actually, we need someone for 4 hours. So, okay, now we got to reevaluate.
Right.
Do we only want someone for an hour and a half? Is that all really truly our budget? And then if that is the case, all right, we're going to have that person come in exactly in the middle to really capture the energy. So it just depends again on what's needed. But again, going back to that why, right? What do you want to have happen before you make this arbitrary decision on an idea?
Yeah, no, and I love that. Yeah, it goes back to, okay, what's your budget? And then again, what's your why? So like using the photographer, the example, like, hey, I wanted this, exciting moment that we're going to have on stage. So it's like, okay, like you said, okay, let's get this hour and a half where we can get some of these things happening in the crowd or whatever, but we make sure that exciting thing on stage is happening. The photographer's there to capture it. And then that's your why. So at the end on Monday, when you send out your, hey, thank you guys all for coming. We shared that moment on stage where we honored our person, and there was an embrace and an award, a key to the city, whatever. Then you can send that out and like, oh, that's what you wanted.
Right. And those are the key pictures rather than maybe an hour of setup pictures that no one's going to use.
Right, of the silent auction that we didn't want
to do anyway. No one wants to do.
I love it. Excellent. Let me take us to our next point. We kind of started with our elevate of elevating your story of where you started and what got you to this, and then we had our amplify of amplifying these live events and this storytelling and things. And next, I like to kind of get into the engage and the kind of the future and what we see coming up, and just kind of wanted to tap in for one, what's next up with you guys. We kind of had our summer. We're still kind of in the middle of gala season a little bit. We just got done with some. There's some coming up. But what's this next season looking like for you guys?
Yeah, well, we are in the throes of gala season for sure. So we've got and we kind of split up our year into two halves. So we call it the spring and the fall, even though spring is now beginning around February.
Right. I just want to say that's an early spring.
And then fall goes all the way into sometimes December. But basically 2 halves of the year. So the second half of the year is usually busier than the first half. It seems like everybody wants to do a gala or some type of fundraising event in September or October. And so we are full on mode for all those for that piece, and I think in terms of of trends, I think that's what you were asking, like what's coming up down the road for clients and for events. We're seeing some organizations deciding to not do anything, right? Some folks have canceled this year, but for the most part, even with all of the cuts and budget cuts and federal funding and things like that, nonprofits have more of a need. So we're actually seeing more events coming out from folks, and if they're not necessarily full-on galas, but maybe something a little bit more creative. So we have an event, and we've worked with this client now for years and years, but they started off as a full-on auction, silent, live, all of that. And when they went into the pandemic, of course, it went virtual. Well, coming out of the pandemic, they were like, maybe we don't do an auction anymore. And so it turned from a Saturday night event to a 2-hour event in the middle of the week. So Thursday night now, 2 hours, 5 to 7, no auction, and just a raise the paddle now. Used to be envelopes, now we're doing a raise the paddle. And that event has grown, I want to say like 300%. So when they were doing their auction, it was a very modest kind of an event. So raising about 50,000, and then this past year over 300,000 with about 120 people in the room. So I think nonprofits have to just figure out what's going to work for them, and it doesn't require a 300 people in a room with, a full-fledged silent and live and games and program and video. We don't even do a video for this event. So there's a lot of savings, but the work, that pre-work, that connection, that donor connection is still there. So I think clients are looking at, and nonprofits are looking at ways to be more creative in this next season, in next year, not knowing what's going to happen, for example, in 2026, like no one knows.
Right.
So with costs going up, that's what we try and do, is we look at ways to be more creative. So are there ways that can we do something a little different that will still get you to your fundraising goal?
No, I love that. And it sounds like you're, again, just kind of leading with their why. Like, do you have just this need to have an auction, or is it that you want to connect with your people, give them something that they can be proud of and a way for them to give? Like, oh, well, why don't we think about doing this other thing, right? And it's kind of one of those things that, like you were saying, we've had some clients that have either everyone's called to postpone. We're not canceling the event. We'll do it next year. So we're postponing to 26. Like, all right, I'll be waiting for the call. And I appreciate it. And everyone's journey is a little bit different. But like you said, I think more times than not, I've seen just slight pivots of like reimagining, right? In terms of, hey, maybe we don't do the video. Like we had some clients like, you guys did an amazing video for us last year. Maybe we don't need one this year. Like, sure, no problem. And then now things that you're going to need, you're going to need a venue. You're going to need, I would probably say sound would probably be my most important thing for anyone, because if they can't hear you, if you can't communicate.
That's a deal breaker.
Yeah,
no sound is definitely a deal breaker for an event.
That's the last thing that you cut. The first thing that you need, I think, is going to be your venue, and then, lock in those, and then just figure out, are we feeding them or not? You have to figure out the food thing, if that's a part of it or not. But then from there, like you said, there's a lot of creativity. Are we just doing a raise a paddle? Can we get away with having an engaging stage presence? It doesn't have to be an auctioneer, but maybe it's an MC that is connected to the community that we're reaching.
Absolutely.
And we can still reach those goals because they're able to kind of move the show along and connect with folks in that way. And it's like you said, if you're doing it on a Thursday versus a Saturday, chances are your rental is going to be cheaper, right?
Exactly.
and all those
Yeah.
things
Just
that
thinking,
go into it.
yeah, thinking outside the box, thinking of ways to, if budget is the priority and the concern, then are there ways to kind of do things a little differently?
And that's awesome that you were able to save them money, but then they're also be able to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
So like their net is even way higher. So that, I mean, I love a 300%. I wish that for everybody's future. No, that's awesome. So we're talking about trends, and like you said, I mean, costs are going up and funding is going down on a global level. It's just a matter of connecting, I think, with people often. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think too, in terms of trends, we're hearing a lot from organizations that, you know, as the population ages, they're really looking for that new set of donors, right? They're looking for a younger set of people to come to their events. And that's part of why those large scale galas aren't going to appeal to maybe someone in their, you know, late 20s, early 30s. And they're not going to probably be your $10,000 paddle raise person, right? But there's no reason why they can't still be cultivated and eventually get to a point where they're, you know, they are passionate about your organization and your mission, and they're going to, you know, maybe step in and volunteer for a little while. And so it's kind of a long game to bring in that younger generation. I've even done a few webinars and things on kind of like, how do we bring in Gen Z into nonprofit events, and what does that look like? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So you're not going to suddenly bring people in and you're going to get the exact same donation amount, and it will take time. But that's part of doing that cultivation.
Absolutely. You got to plant those seeds. And I think when it's done well, like you were saying, when you connect with the GFS, they're able to handle the event side of things. They're still interfacing with you, right? They're still guiding, like, hey, here's our theme or whatever, all those kinds of things. But they're allowing you to do this work so then they can focus on this other work. And a lot of it is engaging with them, with your current folks, but then also how can we get this next generation and keep it going. And it's more of a 365. Like, it's not necessarily like just that one gala. It's like, it's that gala, but then maybe you have a fall gala, but maybe you're having a spring 5K. Right. And it's like, it's around your event. You can bring this new people out and...
Or maybe you're just even having a small social in your offices, right? It doesn't have to be these large scale events. Some of those smaller ones could be how you really get folks to really understand who you are and what you do. So doing something like smaller events are also a great way to bring in that younger
Right. And we're not asking for money. It's just like, I just want you to be around community, see what we're about, see the work that we do, and figure out, is this group for you? Is this tribe for you? And I love, like, what you mentioned about, you know, sometimes those attendees become volunteers, right? And those volunteers become board members, and those board members, you know, invite more people,
exactly.
right? And get that part going. But if you're not engaging with that next generation or meeting them where they're at, you know, it's like, hey, the newsletter is great, but what is your social media looking like? You know, are you out there? Are you connecting with those other people and thinking about it in that way? That's awesome. That's awesome. And then I wanted to kind of talk about also, as we're looking at these trends, and again, I think not knowing what 26 is going to bring is even more of a reason that folks should be reaching out, and just kind of wanted to talk through how do, like, nonprofit leaders, how do they partner, how do they get started with connecting with you guys? Yeah,
that's a great question. So our website is gfsevents.org, and I love meeting with nonprofits. So we offer 30-minute consultation to anyone. So I'll have folks just do a 30-minute consultation, just say, hey, we just want to talk. We just want to understand, like, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? How would it work? I've often talked clients out of doing events. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want you to do an event if you shouldn't be doing an event. And I've also talked clients out of hiring us sometimes when it's like, well, you're not quite ready yet. You're talking about a much smaller event, and looking at your budget, you probably need to go ahead and do that internally, maybe for a year or two, and then come back to us. So happy to have anyone, you know, call, have a conversation, talk through what's needed. And then we also have a blog that we do monthly. And there is actually one on, I think it's called Free is Not Free.
Right. We get that one on the t-shirts.
And so anyone that wants to, you know, looking at our blog, we've got a lot of really fun ideas, tips, tricks. So just connecting with us, and of course on socials, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also Facebook.
Excellent. And then that blog, they can follow that. Is that part of the newsletter? Because I know I get the email.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
It's, yes, newsletter, sign up for the newsletter, and then the blog is on our website too. So,
And I love that. I think for folks that are kind of on the fence of, am I ready for an event planner and am I ready to take my event to that next level? It's connecting. Do the 30-minute consultation. Join the newsletter of them, as well as like event spaces and other things, and go visit places, go to other people's galas so you can get ideas of like, okay, what does this look like? How can that work? I always say, like, if you're trying to get in and around it, volunteer for that other org, so you can just kind of get the feel of like, okay, even though everyone else shows up at 6 looking amazing, there was a whole group of people that were here at 10 in tennis shoes.
Or earlier.
Right, in sweatsuits and making this whole thing happen, and just kind of understanding what goes into it. And like you said, like, maybe you're not ready for it, or maybe you are, but a lot of it is just you don't know what you don't know. So doing that, and then also, I know some of it is like I said, I've seen you on panels and some of those other things. Are those for public, or was that just for like event people when you talk about that stuff and some of those?
Yeah, so some of the times where I've spoken on a panel have definitely been for organizations like associations. But yeah, so I love speaking. I'd love to speak on. I've also done a lot of webinars, some national webinars too, for example, the Washington Nonprofits Association. So that's an example, or some of the platforms do national webinars as well.
Excellent. So yeah, there's multiple ways that people can connect with you even before doing business. Like, we do the same thing on my end. I'm like, let's just have a conversation, right? I have folks that like, hey, I heard about you. We're doing this thing. I got this quote from the in-house AV people and it's insane. Can you just take a look at it for me? And a lot of times I say, yeah, that is insane. And a lot of times they do that. When they always say it's like, prefer doesn't mean you have to. Preferred is generally like they have a relationship with the hotel or the convention center. Exactly. But a lot of times you can find some savings there. You're going to have to pay for power. You're going to have to pay for internet. But generally everything else is on the table. But a lot of it is just from talking to the professionals, right?
And there's times, I'm sure you've done the same, we can actually save you money. I mean, that's the thing. There's a cost savings there.
From your relationship.
Yeah, because we know what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so again, saving someone time is also saving someone money. And that sometimes isn't always built into how a nonprofit thinks of their costs for their event.
Excellent. So you guys heard it. You got have multiple ways that you can connect, and at the very least, like I would say, thing that costs you nothing is join the newsletter, or just go on the website, check out the blogs, things that work for you and can apply to you. But yeah, I think that's the key, is just connect, do the 30 minutes, see where you're at, and that will help set you up for success in 26, especially us not knowing things, right? And just kind of touching base and seeing, how can we tackle this together and things of that nature. And next is our fun stuff, is our quick fire round of just some quick questions and quick answers. So I'll start here with what's your favorite venue you've ever worked in?
Ooh, that's a good question. All right, let me think quickly. This isn't going to be rapid fire here. So I like unusual venues too. So one of the most unusual venues we ever had was a farm. And it definitely fit the theme of the organization. And it was a very fun event. There was a lot of logistical details around it to make it work, but I like the challenge of that. And then there are some venues in like the Seattle area that I love because the staff is so great. They're so easy to work with. So sometimes the hotels, some of the larger hotels, they just do such a great job with hospitality that that makes it easier. Right. It's easier on us. It's easier on the clients.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that could go such a long way, where just because it's a beautiful venue, if you don't have the right event people working there, it can make it ugly very fast.
Yeah.
In terms of like how they're going to treat you, how they're going to treat your guests, etc. So working with trusted venues, trusted staff. Yeah, no, I love a good hospitality, right? It goes a long way for sure. What's a small detail that can make or break your event?
I would say doing a strong run of show a few days before the event, making sure that everybody who's supposed to be on stage is at that meeting. We do a run through. We like to do even just more than just a cue to cue. We like to really go through word by word and make sure people understand exactly what's happening. And especially for events that are a little bit more complicated, if there's an awardee, if there's entertainment, even as something as simple as like, okay, how are they going on and off stage? We did an event together, remember last October, where we had quite a few on stage, off stage, and just even like, okay, everyone needs to exit stage right. Oh, but with the exit stage right, then they're going to run into over here. So we do actually have to go exit stage. And so just like coordinating all of that and making sure it's dialed in, I think can really make or break your evening. And also just help make sure that there's no mistakes.
So we're saying we can't show up an hour before and just make it work? Yeah. I know that's one thing I love about you guys is like there's going to be a stumble through some weeks out and that we're just kind of talking through it, and then we're going to do a proper read through. Like, no, you're going to read your entire script. Yep. Say these words. Seattle's one of these beautiful places. We have a bunch of indigenous things and words that if you have like a guest speaker that may not be from around here and doesn't know how to say Puyallup,
exactly,
reading it for the first time and things of that nature.
Let's pronounce the sponsor names. Let someone that's given a lot of money, let's make sure we're pronouncing their name correctly. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. That will definitely make or break will you have them next year? Because people remember those little things for sure. Who would be a dream keynote speaker you'd love to feature or work with?
Oh, so I was lucky enough, and you were on the same event. We had Angela Davis last year.
The honorable.
At one of our events. And that was really incredible. And I think it's just because I went to school in Chicago. Honestly, I would love to do an event with Oprah Winfrey. I think that would be super fun. Michelle Obama also would be amazing. So those are probably two of my
shout out. Let's put it out there. Yeah. Just in case anybody wants
to do an event.
Here's your girl.
Yes.
Make it happen. Yeah, no, those would definitely be fun for sure. And then do you have any personal rituals or things that you do before the doors open?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't have a specific, like, this always has to happen. One of the things that I think our team does is whoever's not on the event, because not everyone comes to all the events, we usually, somebody who's, not working that day is starting a text thread that just says, go team, good luck. And it's really fun to see. It's fun to see, like, either whether it's, in the moment, sometimes I haven't even looked at my phone to see that kind of encouragement, or maybe it's at the end of the night and it's like, oh, wow, there's all these like, go, you got this, you're going to make this, you're going to rock this event. So that's always fun to see.
No, I love that. And when I was coming with these questions, I was like, dang, we don't even do something. And I'm thinking back to it, a lot of times right before the doors open, there's too many fires that are kind of being put out.
Putting out a lot of fires.
You're like, has anyone done this or done that? Is the valet open? But I would love to do something like similar to like sports teams where it's like, let's line up and let's do a cheer or something, because like you said, you have this team and it's like, in these last 13 hours we're like a family here. We're trying to make it work. But I love the text thread. We have our Google chat, same kind of thing. But I want to try to see if we can take 5 to do something and just let folks know, like, hey, you're appreciated. It's about to get crazy, and I thank you ahead of time. And see if we can build in some of that time. But usually it's always, again, we don't know what the challenge is going to be. Every event's a little bit different, but it's like, oh, the power at registration isn't turned on, and nobody's readers work, and we're trying to bring an extension from there and tape it down and make it look pretty. And so many times the public has no idea any of that's happening, and that's our job,
right? And sometimes the client doesn't know either,
right?
And that's even more our job, right? We want to be able to put those fires out. It's like, oh, that was a fire, but it's long since gone. So we're all good.
And that's why you engage with event planners and professionals in the different markets. But then that gets in the way of our cheer. So we're trying to limit the fires so we can have our pregame rituals. And then lastly, if you weren't producing events, what would you be doing?
Ooh. I don't know. I do love events. I probably would still produce events. Maybe they would be more social things.
Yeah.
I think I would, and I do this, build this into my life anyway, but I think I would probably just travel a little bit more.
I love that.
Yeah. I think I've already made it an effort to travel more, even with events, just kind of having that downtime. Mm-hmm. But I think I would do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. Travel is a big thing. My wife always makes fun to me of her love language is booking travel or booking vacations or no, the act of vacations. That's her love language. And even just like little things. So we had an event 2 weeks ago, an event last week, or there was a week in between, and we went to Sancadia just for like a quick little 4-day. Hey, let's get out. Our 4-year-old had a blast going up and down the water slide 900 times. And I actually got my steps in. So that was interesting going up, coming down with him. But
just to decompress, just to get away. Yeah.
You got to have it. And then if I wasn't doing events, I was like, same type of deal. Like, I just like the energy. I like people. But I think it'd be probably like, maybe it's having a venue in a Mexico where you can do events, but it's on your time. It's super chill. It's like, we'll have a thing here in the space and this will be the thing that I do. But yeah, no, I think it's just one of the things where it's just in you. You just want to be around people. You want to be around folks that are doing great work in community and helping them achieve their goals. And it's just awesome to see like when folks bring on, folks on stage that are benefits of the said service or the thing, like it's the mentor and the mentee, and you're like seeing this little kid and it's just like, they're just brighten up your day. Like, this is why we do it. We were here since 8 and I'm tired on my third, batch of caffeine, but we are here and this is why, and it's all worth it. Yeah. So lastly, you have your camera over here. If you want to kind of share anything else, this is a great opportunity for kind of painting that picture of like, who is that client that's ready for a GFS and the best way they can connect with you.
Awesome. Well, if you are a nonprofit that is either needing some more support, whether it's with logistics or audience development, maybe sponsorship support, the easiest way to connect with us is to go to gfsevents.org and book a consultation call. I'm happy to chat with you, talk through what your needs are, and if there's an opportunity for us to help you, I would love to provide that opportunity to you.
Thank you for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Carlos. It's been really fun. I love your studio, and it was a really fun morning.
Excellent. And again, guys, this is Elite Insights. The whole purpose of us inviting awesome people like GFS Events here is so you guys can get something out of it. If anything at all, you can take some of the stuff that we talked about today and apply it to your own journey. If and when you're ready to take it to that next level, we're an email away, we're a phone call away, we're a DM away to engage, and hopefully we can provide that value. And again, thanks again for checking in. See you next time.